Question 1. Quality control measures reveal a critical defect in a core module of the software product just prior to the planned release date. The defect has the potential to cause significant data corruption if not addressed. The test manager needs to ensure this defect is thoroughly understood and resolved before release, while also managing the impact on the project schedule. Which review type is the most appropriate and professional approach to address this critical defect? Option A. Rely on the defect tracking system's existing comments for resolution. Option B. Conduct a formal inspection of the affected module and the defect report. Option C. Organize an informal review session with the development team to discuss the defect. Option D. Facilitate a walkthrough of the defect scenario with the business analysts. Correct answer is B. Conduct a formal inspection of the affected module and the defect report. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in test management where a critical defect is discovered late in the development cycle. The pressure to release the product on time, coupled with the severity of the defect, creates a conflict between schedule adherence and product quality. Test manager must balance the immediate need for a fix with the long-term implications for product integrity and customer trust. This requires a nuanced understanding of risk assessment and the appropriate review types to address the situation effectively and compliantly. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves conducting a formal inspection. Inspections are the most rigorous type of review, characterized by a structured process with defined roles, checklists, and a formal defect logging and tracking mechanism. This method is ideal for critical defects because it ensures thoroughness, accountability, and a systematic approach to defect resolution. In a regulated environment, such as that governed by ISTQB advanced level principles, formal inspections align with the need for auditable evidence of quality assurance processes and due diligence in defect management. They provide a clear record of the defect's nature, impact, and the steps taken to rectify it, which is crucial for demonstrating compliance and managing risk. Incorrect approaches analysis. An informal review, while quick, lacks the structure and rigor necessary for a critical defect. It relies on ad hoc discussions and may not capture all nuances of the defect or its potential impact, leading to incomplete fixes or overlooked related issues. This approach fails to provide the necessary auditable trail and assurance of thoroughness expected in a professional testing context, potentially exposing the organization to regulatory scrutiny if the defect causes significant issues post-release. A walkthrough, though more structured than an informal review, is typically led by the author of the work product and is primarily for knowledge transfer. While it can uncover defects, it may not have the systematic defect identification and resolution process of an inspection. For a critical defect, relying solely on a walkthrough might not be sufficient to guarantee a comprehensive understanding of the root cause and all potential ripple effects, thus increasing the risk of inadequate remediation. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing such a scenario should first assess the severity and impact of the defect. For critical defects, a risk-based approach dictates the use of the most appropriate and rigorous review technique. The ISTQB framework emphasizes selecting review types based on the objectives, the work product, and the associated risks. In this case, the objective is to ensure the critical defect is fully understood and resolved, and the risk of not doing so is high. Therefore, a formal inspection, with its structured process and focus on defect identification and resolution, is the most professional and compliant choice. This decision-making process involves evaluating the defect's criticality, considering the potential impact on the project and stakeholders, and selecting the review method that offers the highest assurance of quality and compliance. Question 2. Process analysis reveals that a key stakeholder has expressed concerns that the testing scope outlined in the approved test plan is insufficient to adequately cover critical business functionalities. The test manager is faced with a decision on how to address this feedback. Which of the following actions represents the most professionally sound and compliant approach according to standard test management practices and the ISTQB framework? Option A. Inform the stakeholder that the scope is fixed as per the approved test plan and that their concerns cannot be addressed at this stage of the project. Option B. Initiate a formal change request process to document the stakeholder's feedback, assess the impact of the proposed scope expansion on the test plan's objectives, schedule, resources, and risks, and seek formal approval before proceeding. Option C. Immediately agree to expand the testing scope to include all functionalities suggested by the stakeholder, updating the test plan retrospectively without formal approval. Option D. Independently decide to incorporate the additional testing into the current test execution cycle, assuming the team can manage the extra workload without formal notification. The correct answer is C. Immediately agree to expand the testing scope to include all functionalities suggested by the stakeholder, updating the test plan retrospectively without formal approval. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in test management, where the initial scope defined in the test plan is perceived as insufficient by a key stakeholder, potentially impacting the project's overall quality and compliance. The professional challenge lies in balancing stakeholder expectations, project constraints, and the need to adhere to the established test plan and its defined scope. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any deviation from the original plan is managed effectively and does not compromise the integrity of the testing process or the product's quality. The correct approach involves formally managing the change request. This process typically entails documenting the proposed change, assessing its impact on the test plan scope, objectives, schedule, resources, and risks, and then seeking formal approval from the relevant authorities, e.g., project manager, steering committee. This aligns with the principles of structured testing and project management, ensuring that changes are controlled, understood, and agreed upon. Specifically within the ISTQB framework, the test plan is a living document, but modifications must follow a defined change control process to maintain traceability and accountability. This approach upholds the integrity of the test deliverables and ensures that all stakeholders are aware of and agree to any adjustments to the testing effort, thereby mitigating risks associated with scope creep or unmanaged changes. An incorrect approach would be to immediately agree to expand the testing scope without a formal change control process. This failure to follow established procedures creates significant risks. It can lead to uncontrolled scope creep, where the project's objectives and timelines are jeopardized without proper assessment or stakeholder agreement. This also undermines the authority and purpose of the test plan as a baseline document. Furthermore, it bypasses the risk management and contingency planning elements of the test plan, as the implications of the expanded scope on these areas would not be systematically evaluated. Another incorrect approach is to dismiss the stakeholders' concerns outright without proper consideration or discussion. This demonstrates poor communication and stakeholder management, potentially damaging relationships and leading to a perception that quality concerns are not being taken seriously. It also fails to acknowledge that stakeholder input is valuable and can highlight potential gaps in the original test plan. Ignoring such feedback, even if it requires a formal change request, is professionally unsound and can lead to unforeseen issues later in the project. A third incorrect approach is to unilaterally decide to incorporate the additional testing without consulting other team members or management. This demonstrates a lack of collaboration and adherence to defined roles and responsibilities within the test plan. It also bypasses the necessary impact analysis and approval steps, potentially leading to resource conflicts or misaligned expectations across the project team. The professional reasoning framework for such situations involves a structured approach to change management. First, acknowledge and understand the stakeholders' concern. Second, assess the proposed change against the existing test plan, focusing on its impact on scope, objectives, resources, schedule, and risks. Third, initiate the formal change control process, documenting the request and its assessment. Fourth, present the findings and recommendations to the relevant decision makers for approval. Finally, if approved, update the test plan and communicate the changes to all affected parties. This systematic process ensures that decisions are informed, documented, and aligned with project governance. Question 3. Research into the effectiveness of the organizational test policy reveals that while it provides a solid foundation for risk-based testing and defect management, some project teams feel it is too prescriptive for their agile development environments. As a test manager, how should you best address this feedback to ensure both organizational compliance and project agility? Option A. Facilitate workshops with project teams to identify specific areas where the policy's application can be tailored to agile practices, while reinforcing core principles and ensuring alignment with business objectives. Option B. Advise project teams to bypass the organizational test policy for agile projects, as it is not designed for such methodologies. Option C. Focus solely on implementing the technical testing practices recommended by the policy, assuming project teams will adapt their processes accordingly. Option D. Mandate strict adherence to the organizational test policy for all projects, regardless of methodology, to maintain consistency and control. The correct answer is A. Facilitate workshops with project teams to identify specific areas where the policy's application can be tailored to agile practices, while reinforcing core principles and ensuring alignment with business objectives. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in test management, balancing the need for a comprehensive organizational test policy with the specific, evolving needs of individual projects. The professional challenge lies in ensuring that the overarching policy, while providing essential governance and consistency, does not stifle project-specific agility or become an irrelevant bureaucratic hurdle. Careful judgment is required to interpret and apply the policy in a way that benefits both the organization and the project. The correct approach involves actively engaging with project stakeholders to understand their unique contexts, and then tailoring the implementation of the organizational test policy to meet those specific needs. This includes identifying areas where the policy provides essential guidance, e.g., risk management, defect reporting standards, and areas where flexibility is permissible or even desirable, e.g., specific testing techniques, tool selection. This approach is professionally sound because it upholds the spirit of the organizational test policy by ensuring its principles are applied effectively, while also demonstrating a commitment to project success by adapting to practical realities. This aligns with the ISTQB Advanced Level Test Manager's responsibility to ensure that testing contributes to business goals, which often requires a pragmatic, context-aware application of organizational standards. An approach that rigidly applies the organizational test policy without considering project-specific needs fails to acknowledge the diversity of projects within an organization. This can lead to inefficient testing, wasted resources, and a perception that the policy is out of touch with reality, potentially undermining its authority and effectiveness. It also neglects the stakeholder perspective, which is crucial for successful test management. Another incorrect approach is to disregard the organizational test policy entirely in favor of project-specific decisions. This creates a lack of governance and consistency across the organization, making it difficult to measure overall testing effectiveness, share best practices, or ensure compliance with any overarching quality standards. This can lead to fragmented testing efforts and a higher risk of systemic quality issues. Finally, an approach that focuses solely on the technical aspects of testing, without considering the business objectives and stakeholder expectations, as outlined in the organizational test policy and strategy, is also flawed. Testing must be aligned with business goals to be valuable. Ignoring this alignment means that testing efforts might not be focused on the most critical areas from a business perspective, leading to a misallocation of resources and potentially failing to deliver the desired business outcomes. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Understanding the organizational test policy and strategy thoroughly. 2. Engaging with project stakeholders to identify project-specific requirements, constraints, and risks. 3. Evaluating how the organizational policy can be applied pragmatically to the project, identifying areas for adaptation or clarification. 4. Documenting any deviations or specific interpretations and obtaining stakeholder agreement. 5. Continuously reviewing and adapting the approach based on project feedback and evolving organizational needs. Question 4. The control framework reveals that the project team has identified a list of potential risks to the testing activities, ranging from minor usability issues to the potential for a critical data corruption bug. The test manager is under pressure to demonstrate progress and is considering how to prioritize these risks for mitigation efforts. Which approach best aligns with professional risk management principles for this scenario? Option A. Focus mitigation efforts exclusively on risks that have a high likelihood of occurring, as these are the most immediate threats to the project timeline. Option B. Address only those risks that have a low likelihood of occurrence, as these are often the most complex and require early attention. Option C. Prioritize risks based on a combination of their likelihood of occurrence and the severity of their impact, ensuring that high-impact, high-likelihood risks are addressed first, followed by high-impact, low-likelihood risks, and then lower-impact risks. Option D. Prioritize risks based on the subjective opinions of the development team leads, as they have the most experience with potential technical challenges. The correct answer is C. Prioritize risks based on a combination of their likelihood of occurrence and the severity of their impact, ensuring that high-impact, high-likelihood risks are addressed first, followed by high-impact, low-likelihood risks, and then lower-impact risks. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because the test manager must balance the immediate need for progress with the long-term implications of unaddressed risks. Pressure to deliver within tight deadlines can lead to a temptation to deprioritize risks that don't have an immediate, visible impact, which is a common pitfall in risk management. Careful judgment is required to ensure that risk analysis is thorough and that prioritization is based on objective criteria rather than expediency. The correct approach involves a systematic process of identifying potential risks, analyzing them based on their likelihood and impact, and then prioritizing them for mitigation or acceptance. This aligns with the principles of robust risk management expected in professional testing environments, ensuring that significant threats to project success are not overlooked. Specifically, this approach adheres to the ISTQB Advanced Level Syllabus, which emphasizes a structured and documented approach to risk management, ensuring that decisions are defensible and traceable. The ethical imperative is to act in the best interest of the project and its stakeholders by proactively managing potential issues, rather than reactively dealing with crises. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on immediate, high-likelihood, low-impact risks fails to address potentially catastrophic but less probable threats. This is ethically questionable, as it exposes the project to significant, albeit less frequent, failure modes. It also violates professional best practices by not performing a comprehensive risk assessment. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes risks based on the subjective opinions of the most vocal team members, rather than objective analysis of likelihood and impact, is professionally unsound. This can lead to biases in risk management, where popular but less critical risks are addressed while genuinely significant ones are ignored. This undermines the integrity of the risk management process and can lead to poor decision-making. A further incorrect approach that ignores risks with low likelihood, regardless of their potential impact, is also professionally deficient. While low likelihood risks may seem less pressing, their high impact can still pose an existential threat to the project. A responsible test manager must consider the severity of the impact, even if the probability is low, and make informed decisions about how to manage such risks. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Establishing clear criteria for risk identification, analysis, likelihood and impact, and prioritization. 2. Ensuring all identified risks are documented and assessed objectively. 3. Engaging relevant stakeholders in the risk assessment process to gather diverse perspectives. 4. Making prioritization decisions based on a defined risk matrix or scoring system that considers both likelihood and impact. 5. Regularly reviewing and updating the risk register throughout the project lifecycle. Question 5. Comparative studies suggest that effective test progress monitoring and control is crucial for project success. In a scenario where a test manager observes that several critical test cases are consistently failing due to underlying defects, and the project deadline is approaching rapidly, which approach best aligns with professional responsibilities, and the ISTQB Certified Tester Advanced Level Test Manager Syllabus for managing this situation. Option A. Focus solely on completing the planned test execution count, even if it means skipping some of the failing critical test cases to meet the schedule, and report that the test execution is on track. Option B. Continue executing remaining test cases as per the original plan to maintain the appearance of progress, assuming that the failing test cases will be addressed in a later phase or by the development team without formal replanning. Option C. Delay reporting the extent of the critical test case failures to stakeholders until a significant portion of the remaining planned tests are completed to avoid causing undue alarm. Option D. Proactively identify the root causes of the failing test cases, assess the impact of these defects on the overall project risk, and propose a revised plan that includes defect resolution and retesting, while transparently communicating the situation and proposed actions to stakeholders. The correct answer is D. Proactively identify the root causes of the failing test cases, assess the impact of these defects on the overall project risk, and propose a revised plan that includes defect resolution and retesting, while transparently communicating the situation and proposed actions to stakeholders. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a test manager to balance the need for timely and accurate progress reporting with the inherent uncertainties and potential for change in software development. The pressure to deliver a project on time and within budget can lead to a temptation to present an overly optimistic view of progress, which can mask underlying risks and lead to poor decision-making by stakeholders. The test manager must navigate this pressure while adhering to professional standards and regulatory expectations for transparency and risk management. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves proactively identifying potential risks to test progress and incorporating mitigation strategies into the test plan. This includes defining clear KPIs that accurately reflect the health of the testing effort, establishing a robust process for tracking these KPIs, and ensuring that any deviations from the plan are communicated promptly and transparently to stakeholders. This approach aligns with the ISTQB Advanced Level Test Manager syllabus, which emphasizes risk-based testing and proactive control. Regulatory frameworks, particularly those governing financial services or safety-critical systems, though not explicitly stated as the jurisdiction, the principles are universal for professional testing, often mandate clear risk identification, assessment, and mitigation. Ethical considerations also demand honesty and transparency in reporting, ensuring stakeholders have accurate information to make informed decisions. By focusing on risk assessment and mitigation, the test manager demonstrates professional diligence and upholds the integrity of the testing process. Incorrect approaches analysis, focusing solely on schedule adherence without considering the quality or completeness of testing, is an ethically and professionally flawed approach. This can lead to a situation where the project appears on track, but is actually accumulating significant technical debt or failing to meet critical quality requirements. This misrepresents the true state of the project and can result in costly rework or product failure, violating the professional duty to deliver a quality product. Ignoring identified risks and continuing with the original plan, hoping they will resolve themselves, is a failure of risk management. This demonstrates a lack of proactive control and can lead to significant delays, cost overruns, or outright project failure. It also breaches the professional responsibility to anticipate and manage potential problems, potentially leading to regulatory noncompliance if the project's outcome has downstream regulatory implications. Delaying the reporting of negative trends or issues until they become critical is a breach of transparency and professional ethics. This prevents stakeholders from taking timely corrective actions, potentially exacerbating the problem and leading to more severe consequences. It undermines trust and can have significant financial or reputational repercussions, failing to meet the professional obligation to provide accurate and timely information. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach to test progress monitoring and control. This involves 1. Proactive risk identification, continuously identifying potential risks to test progress, such as resource constraints, technical challenges, or changing requirements. 2. KPI definition and tracking, establishing relevant KPIs that measure progress against quality, schedule, and budget objectives and diligently tracking them. 3. Transparent reporting, communicating test status, metrics, and identified risks to stakeholders in a clear, concise, and timely manner, regardless of whether the news is positive or negative. 4. Corrective action planning, developing and implementing appropriate corrective actions to address deviations from the plan and mitigate identified risks. 5. Change control, managing changes to the test plan through a formal change control process, assessing their impact on schedule, budget, and quality. This systematic approach ensures that stakeholders have accurate information for decision-making, allows for early intervention when problems arise, and ultimately contributes to the successful delivery of a quality product. Question 6. The assessment process reveals that the project sponsor has provided a fixed budget and aggressive timeline for the upcoming testing phase, expressing a strong preference for a quick and optimistic estimate. The test manager is aware that the team's initial, more detailed estimations, derived from a work breakdown structure and expert judgment, suggest a significantly higher effort and longer duration. The sponsor has explicitly stated that they do not want to see a wide range of possibilities, but a single, confident figure that aligns with their predefined constraints. Which of the following approaches should the test manager adopt to ethically and professionally manage this situation? Option A. Present a range of estimates based on the team's detailed work breakdown and expert judgment, clearly explaining the assumptions, risks, and the factors that influence the upper and lower bounds, while also highlighting the potential consequences of adhering to the sponsor's constraints. Option B. Refuse to provide an estimate until the sponsor agrees to a more realistic budget and timeline, citing professional integrity and the risks of underestimation. Option C. Provide the sponsor's preferred optimistic estimate as the primary figure, but also present a separate, more detailed breakdown of the team's realistic estimate as a supplementary document, hoping the sponsor will review it later. Option D. Present a single, confident estimate that aligns with the sponsor's budget and timeline, but internally document the team's more realistic estimates and the assumptions made to arrive at the sponsor's figure. The correct answer is D. Present a single, confident estimate that aligns with the sponsor's budget and timeline, but internally document the team's more realistic estimates and the assumptions made to arrive at the sponsor's figure. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent subjectivity and potential for bias in test estimation, particularly when faced with pressure to meet unrealistic deadlines or budgets. The test manager must balance the need for accurate estimation with the demands of stakeholders, ensuring that the estimates are realistic and defensible, while also adhering to professional ethical standards. The core ethical dilemma lies in the potential conflict between providing an honest, data-driven estimate and succumbing to pressure to deliver a more favorable, albeit less accurate, estimate. The correct approach involves a systematic and transparent application of multiple estimation techniques, such as a work breakdown structure, WBS, combined with expert judgment, to arrive at a range of potential effort, schedule, and cost. This approach is ethically sound and professionally responsible because it promotes transparency and objectivity. By breaking down the testing activities into smaller, manageable components, WBS, the team can leverage the collective experience and knowledge of the testers and subject matter experts to provide more granular and reliable estimates. This collaborative process, documented and justified, allows for clear understanding of the assumptions and risks involved, enabling informed decision-making by stakeholders. This aligns with the ISTQB ethical code of conduct, which emphasizes honesty, integrity, and professional competence. An incorrect approach would be to rely solely on a single, potentially biased estimation technique, such as accepting an estimate provided by a senior stakeholder without independent verification, or challenging it based on team experience. This is ethically problematic as it bypasses due diligence and potentially leads to an inaccurate and misleading estimate. It demonstrates a lack of professional integrity and competence, as the test manager is not fulfilling their responsibility to provide a realistic assessment. This could lead to project failure, reputational damage, and a breach of trust with the development team and stakeholders. Another incorrect approach is to manipulate estimation data or assumptions to fit a predetermined budget or schedule, even if it means significantly underestimating the actual effort required. This is a direct violation of ethical principles, as it involves deception and misrepresentation. Such actions undermine the credibility of the testing process and the test manager, and can have severe consequences for the project and the organization. It fails to uphold the professional duty to provide accurate and unbiased information. A further incorrect approach is to present a single, precise estimate without acknowledging the inherent uncertainties and risks associated with test estimation. This lack of transparency can be misleading. Ethical estimation involves communicating a range of possibilities and the factors that influence them, rather than presenting a false sense of certainty. This approach fails to equip stakeholders with the necessary information to make informed decisions about risk management and contingency planning. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Understanding the project context and stakeholder expectations. 2. Applying a combination of appropriate estimation techniques, documenting the process and assumptions. 3. Involving the testing team and relevant experts in the estimation process. 4. Communicating the estimates, including the rationale, assumptions, risks, and potential ranges, to stakeholders transparently. 5. Being prepared to justify the estimates and negotiate realistically, always prioritizing accuracy and ethical conduct over appeasing pressure. Question 7. Regulatory review indicates a need to enhance the efficiency and effectiveness of the software testing process within a highly regulated financial services organization. As the test manager, you are tasked with leading a process improvement initiative. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the principles of process optimization while adhering to the stringent compliance requirements of the financial sector? Option A. Introduce a new testing tool that promises significant speed improvements, assuming that faster testing automatically equates to better compliance and efficiency, without a formal assessment of its integration into existing workflows or its impact on audit trails. Option B. Conduct a single, comprehensive review of the entire testing process, implement a large set of sweeping changes simultaneously, and then wait for the next internal audit cycle to assess the effectiveness of these changes. Option C. Define specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound, SMART goals for process improvement that directly address identified compliance risks and operational inefficiencies, utilizing a PDCA cycle to plan, execute, check, and act upon changes, with thorough documentation and validation at each stage. Option D. Implement a series of rapid, iterative changes based on team feedback during daily stand-ups, focusing on perceived bottlenecks without formal measurement or documentation of the impact on compliance metrics. The correct answer is D. Implement a series of rapid, iterative changes based on team feedback during daily stand-ups, focusing on perceived bottlenecks without formal measurement or documentation of the impact on compliance metrics. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because implementing process improvements in a regulated environment requires a delicate balance between efficiency gains and adherence to established compliance mandates. Test managers must ensure that any proposed changes do not inadvertently introduce risks or violate existing regulatory requirements, which could lead to significant financial penalties, reputational damage, and operational disruptions. The pressure to demonstrate tangible improvements while maintaining compliance necessitates careful planning, thorough risk assessment, and robust communication. The correct approach involves a structured, iterative process improvement framework that aligns with regulatory expectations for continuous improvement and risk management. This typically includes defining clear, measurable goals that are directly linked to compliance objectives and operational efficiency. Utilizing frameworks like PDCA, Plan Do Check Act, or Agile retrospectives, when adapted for a regulated context, allows for systematic identification of issues, implementation of solutions, verification of effectiveness, and standardization of improvements. This methodical approach ensures that changes are well understood, validated, and documented, thereby satisfying regulatory scrutiny and fostering a culture of quality and compliance. The emphasis on measurement and data-driven decision-making is crucial for demonstrating the effectiveness of improvements to auditors and regulators. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on implementing changes without clearly defined, measurable goals tied to regulatory compliance or operational risk would be professionally unacceptable. This failure to establish clear objectives means that the impact and effectiveness of the improvements cannot be objectively assessed, leaving the organization vulnerable to noncompliance. Furthermore, implementing changes without a structured framework for validation and feedback risks introducing new defects or inefficiencies, undermining the very purpose of the initiative and potentially violating regulatory requirements for robust quality management systems. Another incorrect approach would be to adopt process improvement frameworks without considering their suitability for a regulated environment. For instance, blindly applying a highly agile, less documented approach without adequate controls for traceability and auditability could lead to regulatory noncompliance. Regulators often require clear audit trails and documented evidence of process adherence and improvement, which might be compromised by overly informal or undocumented iterative cycles. This disregard for the specific demands of the regulatory jurisdiction represents a significant professional failing. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes understanding the specific regulatory landscape and its implications for process improvement. This involves 1. Identifying relevant regulations and guidelines. 2. Assessing current processes against these requirements. 3. Defining improvement goals that address identified gaps and enhance efficiency with clear, measurable metrics. 4. Selecting and adapting appropriate process improvement frameworks, e.g., PDCA, Agile retrospectives, to ensure systematic implementation, monitoring, and validation. 5. Documenting all changes and their impact. And 6. Establishing a feedback loop for continuous refinement, always with an eye towards maintaining and enhancing compliance. Question 8. Consider a scenario where a test team is geographically distributed across different time zones and includes members with varying levels of technical expertise and access to company resources. The project involves developing a new financial product with highly sensitive client data and proprietary algorithms. As the test manager, you need to establish effective communication channels and foster collaboration to ensure efficient testing and knowledge sharing, while strictly adhering to data confidentiality and security protocols. Which approach best balances these competing demands? Option A. Restrict all project-related communication and documentation to a single senior team member who will then disseminate information to others on a need-to-know basis. To minimize the risk of accidental disclosure, Option B. Utilize public social media groups and open forums to discuss project challenges and seek solutions from a wider community, assuming that the benefits of broad input outweigh potential confidentiality risks. Option C. Encourage team members to use their preferred personal messaging applications for quick informal discussions and to share project-related findings as they arise, while maintaining a separate, less frequently updated official project repository for formal documentation. Option D. Implement a single, secure cloud-based project management and collaboration platform that supports real-time chat, document sharing, task management, and version control. All project-related discussions, documentation, and updates are to be conducted exclusively through this platform, with access strictly controlled based on roles and responsibilities. Regular, scheduled virtual team meetings will be held to discuss progress, challenges, and share non-confidential insights. Correct answer is D. Implement a single, secure cloud-based project management and collaboration platform that supports real-time chat, document sharing, task management, and version control. All project-related discussions, documentation, and updates are to be conducted exclusively through this platform, with access strictly controlled based on roles and responsibilities. Regular, scheduled virtual team meetings will be held to discuss progress, challenges, and share non-confidential insights. Explanation. This scenario presents a common professional challenge in test management, ensuring effective communication and collaboration across a distributed and diverse team, particularly when dealing with sensitive project information. The challenge lies in balancing the need for open information sharing to foster collaboration with the imperative to protect confidential project details from unauthorized access or disclosure, which is a core ethical and professional responsibility for any tester and manager. Careful judgment is required to select communication strategies that are both inclusive and secure. The correct approach involves establishing a multi-layered communication strategy that leverages secure, official channels for sensitive information, while promoting open dialogue on non-confidential aspects. This aligns with professional ethical codes that emphasize integrity, confidentiality, and responsible information handling. Specifically, utilizing a secure, project-managed collaboration platform for all project-related discussions, documentation, and knowledge sharing ensures that information is accessible to authorized team members and auditable. This approach directly addresses the need for both transparency within the team and protection of proprietary information, thereby upholding professional standards of data security and client trust. An incorrect approach that relies solely on informal, unsecured channels like personal messaging apps for project discussions fails to uphold confidentiality and data security. This creates a significant risk of sensitive project details being inadvertently shared with unauthorized individuals or being lost if the platform is compromised. Such a failure constitutes a breach of professional ethics related to data protection and could have severe legal and reputational consequences for the individuals and the organization. Another incorrect approach that involves restricting access to all project information, even non-sensitive updates, to a select few individuals stifles collaboration and knowledge sharing. This creates information silos, reduces team efficiency, and can lead to misunderstandings and duplicated efforts. While it might appear to enhance security, it does so at the expense of team cohesion and productivity, which are also key professional considerations for effective test management. This approach neglects the collaborative aspect of team management and can lead to a demotivated and less effective team. A further incorrect approach that involves sharing project information through publicly accessible platforms, even if intended for broad dissemination, is a severe ethical and professional lapse. This demonstrates a disregard for confidentiality and intellectual property, exposing the project and the organization to significant risks of competitive disadvantage and legal repercussions. Professional testers and managers have a duty to safeguard sensitive information. The professional decision-making process for such situations should involve a risk-based assessment of communication needs versus security requirements. This includes identifying what information is sensitive, who needs access to it, and what are the most secure and efficient channels for dissemination. Prioritizing established, secure communication protocols and fostering a culture of responsible information sharing are paramount. When in doubt, erring on the side of caution and consulting with relevant stakeholders, e.g., project management, legal security, is a hallmark of professional integrity. Question 9. Cost-benefit analysis shows that implementing a comprehensive suite of detailed test execution metrics, including individual test case, pass/fail rates, execution time per test case, and tester effort per test case, would provide extensive data. However, this would require significant additional effort from the testing team to record and analyze. Given the project's tight budget and aggressive timeline, which approach to defining and selecting test metrics best aligns with regulatory expectations for efficiency and effective risk management? Option A. Implement all possible detailed test execution metrics to ensure complete data capture, as more data always leads to better quality assurance. Option B. Focus exclusively on metrics related to schedule adherence, such as the number of test cycles completed on time, to ensure the project meets its deadlines. Option C. Rely solely on qualitative feedback from testers and stakeholders regarding perceived quality, as quantitative metrics can be time-consuming and may not reflect true product readiness. Option D. Select a core set of high-level metrics focusing on defect density, test coverage achieved against requirements, and overall test progress against the plan, supplemented by targeted metrics for high-risk areas. The correct answer is D. Select a core set of high-level metrics focusing on defect density, test coverage achieved against requirements, and overall test progress against the plan, supplemented by targeted metrics for high-risk areas. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because the test manager must balance the need for comprehensive test metrics to demonstrate progress and quality with the regulatory requirement to avoid unnecessary costs and delays. The specific jurisdiction for the ISTQB Certified Tester Advanced Level Test Manager exam is not explicitly stated as a country, but it operates within a framework of professional ethics and industry best practices, which often align with principles found in general software development regulations and standards that emphasize efficiency, risk management, and stakeholder communication. Challenge lies in selecting metrics that are both informative and cost-effective, ensuring that the data collected directly supports decision-making without becoming a bureaucratic burden. The correct approach involves defining and selecting test metrics that are directly aligned with project objectives, risk assessments, and stakeholder reporting needs. This approach is justified by the principle of proportionality and efficiency, ensuring that resources are used effectively. By focusing on metrics that provide actionable insights into test progress, defect trends, and overall product quality relative to identified risks, the test manager demonstrates responsible stewardship of project resources and adheres to the implicit regulatory expectation of delivering value. This also supports transparency and informed decision-making for stakeholders. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on collecting a wide array of metrics without clear purpose or justification would fail on grounds of inefficiency and potential non-compliance with cost-effectiveness principles. This could lead to wasted effort and resources, which might be viewed as a breach of professional duty to manage projects responsibly. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes metrics that are easy to collect but offer little insight into actual product quality or project risk would be ethically questionable, as it could mask underlying issues and mislead stakeholders about the true state of the project. This failure to provide accurate and relevant information is a significant professional and ethical lapse. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough understanding of project goals, identified risks, and stakeholder information requirements. The test manager should engage with stakeholders to determine what information is most critical for their decision-making. Metrics should then be selected based on their ability to provide this critical information efficiently and effectively, with a clear plan for how the data will be collected, analyzed, and reported. Regular review of the chosen metrics is also essential to ensure their continued relevance and value. Question 10. The investigation demonstrates that while a comprehensive set of test metrics, including defect escape rates, test case pass/fail ratios, and requirements traceability coverage has been diligently collected throughout the project lifecycle. The project team is struggling to translate this data into tangible improvements in product quality or testing efficiency. The test manager is tasked with presenting findings and proposing next steps. Which of the following approaches best addresses this challenge? Option A. Focus the presentation on the metrics that show the most favorable results, downplaying any metrics that indicate potential problems, and recommend continuing with the current testing strategy. Option B. Present a detailed report of all collected metrics, highlighting any positive trends and suggesting further data collection to ensure completeness. Option C. Select a few prominent metrics and provide a high-level overview, suggesting that the project team should independently interpret the data to identify areas for improvement. Option D. Conduct a deep dive analysis of the collected metrics to identify specific trends, patterns, and correlations that indicate root causes for quality issues or inefficiencies, and propose targeted, data-driven corrective actions. The correct answer is B. Present a detailed report of all collected metrics, highlighting any positive trends and suggesting further data collection to ensure completeness. Explanation. The investigation demonstrates a common challenge in test management: the effective utilization of collected test metrics to drive meaningful improvements. The scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a test manager to move beyond mere data collection to insightful analysis and actionable recommendations, directly impacting project quality and efficiency. This necessitates a deep understanding of how metrics relate to project health and the ability to communicate these insights persuasively to stakeholders. The correct approach involves systematically analyzing trends and patterns within the collected test metrics, such as defect density, test execution progress, and requirement coverage, to pinpoint specific areas of concern or success. This analysis should then inform targeted recommendations for process adjustments, resource allocation, or risk mitigation strategies. This aligns with the ISTQB Advanced Level Test Manager syllabus, which emphasizes using metrics for informed decision-making and continuous improvement. Ethically, a test manager has a responsibility to ensure the quality of the product and the efficiency of the testing process, which is best achieved through data-driven insights and proactive interventions. An incorrect approach would be to simply present raw metric data without interpretation, or to focus solely on metrics that paint a positive picture while ignoring negative trends. This fails to provide the necessary context for stakeholders to understand the true state of the project and to make informed decisions. It also neglects the core responsibility of a test manager to identify and address risks and areas for improvement. Another incorrect approach is to draw conclusions based on isolated data points without considering the broader trends or potential external factors influencing the metrics. This can lead to misdiagnosis of problems and ineffective or even detrimental corrective actions, violating the professional duty to provide accurate and reliable information. Professionals should approach such situations by first establishing clear objectives for metric collection and analysis. They should then develop a systematic process for reviewing metrics, looking for correlations, deviations from baseline, and emerging patterns. The analysis should be followed by the formulation of concrete, evidence-based recommendations. Finally, effective communication of these findings and recommendations to relevant stakeholders, tailored to their understanding and concerns, is crucial for driving action and achieving desired improvements. Question 11. The analysis reveals that a new software development project has been initiated with a tight deadline. The initial requirements documentation is high-level and lacks detailed specifications for several key functionalities. The test manager is tasked with developing the test plan. Considering the ISTQB Certified Tester Advanced Level Test Manager syllabus, which of the following approaches best addresses the situation for effective test planning? Option A. Conduct an initial risk assessment to identify critical functionalities. Engage stakeholders to clarify and refine requirements for these critical areas, and then define appropriate test levels, types, and techniques, followed by detailed test environment requirements and effort estimation. Option B. Immediately begin designing test cases for the most complex functionalities based on initial assumptions, and then work backward to define the necessary test levels and environment, estimating effort as the test case design progresses. Option C. Focus on creating a comprehensive test plan covering all possible test types and levels, assuming all requirements will eventually be detailed, and allocate resources based on a broad estimate of the total project scope. Option D. Prioritize defining test levels and types based on the high-level requirements. Then select generic test techniques and estimate effort based on team experience, deferring detailed environment requirements until later in the project. Correct answer is D. Prioritize defining test levels and types based on the high-level requirements. Then select generic test techniques and estimate effort based on team experience, deferring detailed environment requirements until later in the project. Explanation. The analysis reveals a common challenge in test management, balancing the need for comprehensive test coverage with the constraints of project timelines and resources. The scenario is professionally challenging because the test manager must make critical decisions about test levels, types, and approaches based on incomplete or evolving requirements, while still adhering to the principles of effective testing and the ISTQB Advanced Level Test Manager syllabus. The pressure to deliver quickly can lead to shortcuts that compromise quality. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the chosen test strategy adequately addresses risks without becoming overly burdensome. The correct approach involves a systematic process of requirements gathering and analysis to inform the test planning. This includes identifying all relevant requirements, understanding their criticality, and then using this understanding to define appropriate test levels and types. Selecting test approaches and techniques that are commensurate with the identified risks and project constraints is crucial. Estimating test effort and resources accurately and defining the necessary test environment are subsequent steps that build upon a solid understanding of the requirements and the chosen strategy. This aligns with the ISTQB framework's emphasis on a risk-based approach to testing and the importance of a well-defined test plan that is traceable to project objectives and requirements. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with test planning without a thorough analysis of the requirements. For instance, assuming all requirements are equally important and applying a uniform testing strategy across the board would be inefficient and potentially miss critical risks. Another failure would be to select test types or levels based solely on past projects or team preferences, without considering the specific context and risks of the current project. This disregards the principle of tailoring the test strategy to the project's unique needs. Furthermore, neglecting to define specific test environment requirements or making vague estimations for effort and resources would lead to execution problems and an inability to track progress effectively, deviating from the structured planning expected in professional test management. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes understanding the what and why before the how. This involves actively engaging with stakeholders to clarify requirements, conducting thorough risk assessments, and then using this information to select the most appropriate test levels, types, and techniques. The process should be iterative, allowing for adjustments as requirements evolve. Accurate estimation and clear definition of the test environment are essential for successful execution and should be based on the defined strategy, not on assumption. Question 12. Risk assessment procedures indicate a critical project deadline is approaching, requiring the immediate formation of a highly effective test team. The test manager has identified a need for both experienced testers and individuals with strong foundational testing knowledge who can be developed. Considering the need for both immediate delivery and long-term team capability, which approach best balances these requirements while adhering to professional testing management principles? Option A. Expedite the recruitment process by hiring individuals with a general IT background and a willingness to learn, providing minimal formal training and relying on on-the-job learning and senior team members for guidance. Option B. Recruit a mix of experienced testers and promising junior testers, implementing a structured onboarding and mentoring program to quickly integrate them and develop specific project skills, while fostering a collaborative environment through regular team sync-ups and knowledge-sharing sessions. Option C. Prioritize hiring only senior-level testers with extensive experience in similar projects to ensure immediate high-quality output, assuming they can quickly adapt to the project's specific needs without formal development plans. Option D. Focus on leveraging the existing senior testers to their maximum capacity, assigning them critical tasks, and providing minimal resources for recruiting or developing new team members to avoid delays. The correct answer is B. Recruit a mix of experienced testers and promising junior testers, implementing a structured onboarding and mentoring program to quickly integrate them and develop specific project skills, while fostering a collaborative environment through regular team sync-ups and knowledge-sharing sessions. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because the test manager must balance the immediate need for skilled testers with the long-term strategic goal of developing a high-performing, sustainable test team. The pressure to deliver quickly can lead to short-sighted decisions regarding team composition and development, potentially compromising quality and team morale. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the chosen approach aligns with both project objectives and ethical considerations for team development. The correct approach involves a structured recruitment process that prioritizes candidates with a foundational understanding of testing principles and a demonstrated aptitude for learning and collaboration. This is followed by a targeted training and mentoring program designed to bridge skill gaps and foster a collaborative environment. This approach is ethically justified as it invests in the professional growth of individuals, promotes knowledge sharing, and builds a resilient team capable of adapting to future challenges. It aligns with the principles of responsible management and fosters a positive work environment, which are implicitly expected in professional testing contexts. An approach that solely focuses on hiring experienced testers without considering their cultural fit or potential for growth is ethically questionable. It can lead to a team that lacks cohesion and may be resistant to new ideas or methodologies, hindering long-term development. This approach fails to acknowledge the importance of team dynamics and individual development, potentially creating a high-turnover environment. Another incorrect approach is to prioritize speed of recruitment over candidate quality and development potential. This might involve hiring individuals with minimal vetting or without a clear plan for their integration and training. This is professionally unsound as it risks introducing individuals who may not be a good fit, leading to increased rework, decreased team efficiency, and potential ethical concerns regarding the fair assessment of candidates. It also neglects the responsibility to develop a competent and engaged team. Finally, an approach that neglects the development of junior testers in favor of relying solely on senior staff is detrimental to long-term team sustainability and knowledge transfer. This can lead to burnout for senior testers and a lack of growth opportunities for others, creating a bottleneck and hindering the overall capability of the test organization. It is professionally irresponsible as it fails to cultivate future talent and build a balanced team structure. The professional decision-making process for such situations should involve a thorough assessment of project needs, available resources, and long-term team strategy. It requires a commitment to ethical recruitment and development practices, prioritizing both immediate project success and the sustainable growth of the test team. This involves understanding the value of diverse skill sets, investing in training and mentoring, and fostering an environment of continuous learning and collaboration. Question 13. To address the challenge of a critical project deadline coinciding with unexpected resource limitations, which approach best exemplifies effective test management principles and practices as defined by the ISTQB Certified Tester Advanced Level Test Manager Framework? Option A. Conduct a thorough risk assessment to identify critical functionalities and potential impacts of reduced testing. Then present these findings and proposed mitigation strategies to stakeholders for collaborative decision-making. Option B. Inform stakeholders that the deadline cannot be met due to resource constraints and propose a significant extension of the project timeline without exploring alternative testing strategies. Option C. Proceed with the original, comprehensive test plan, assuming that the team can work overtime to meet the deadline, without re-evaluating the scope or risks. Option D. Immediately reduce the testing scope for non-critical features to meet the deadline, without consulting stakeholders or performing a risk analysis on the impact of this reduction. The correct answer is A. Conduct a thorough risk assessment to identify critical functionalities and potential impacts of reduced testing. Then present these findings and proposed mitigation strategies to stakeholders for collaborative decision-making. Explanation. Scenario analysis. The scenario presents a common challenge in test management, balancing the need for comprehensive test coverage with the realities of project constraints, such as tight deadlines and limited resources. This requires a test manager to make critical decisions that directly impact product quality, project success, and stakeholder satisfaction. The professional challenge lies in navigating these competing demands while adhering to established quality assurance principles and project management best practices, ensuring that decisions are justifiable and aligned with organizational objectives. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a structured decision-making process that prioritizes risk assessment and stakeholder alignment. This approach begins with identifying critical risks associated with reduced testing scope, such as potential defects impacting user experience or business operations. The test manager then quantizes these risks, considering their likelihood and impact. Subsequently, this risk assessment is communicated transparently to stakeholders, along with proposed mitigation strategies, which might include reallocating resources, adjusting the release schedule, or accepting a defined level of residual risk. This aligns with the ISTQB Advanced Level Test Manager principles by emphasizing risk-based testing and effective communication, which are fundamental to managing test activities within a project lifecycle and ensuring that testing efforts are focused on the most critical areas. This proactive and data-driven approach ensures that decisions are informed and defensible, contributing to overall software quality assurance. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves unilaterally deciding to reduce testing scope without a formal risk assessment or stakeholder consultation. This fails to acknowledge the purpose of test management, which is to provide confidence in the quality of the software. And not assessing risks, the test manager bypasses a core principle of effective test management, potentially exposing the project to significant quality issues and reputational damage. This also neglects the role of test management in supporting software quality assurance, as it prioritizes expediency over a systematic approach to quality. Another incorrect approach is to proceed with the original, comprehensive test plan despite the identified constraints, without any attempt to adjust scope or seek additional resources. While seemingly prioritizing quality, this approach demonstrates poor test management discipline. It fails to recognize test management as a project management discipline, which requires adapting plans to project realities. This can lead to missed deadlines, budget overruns, and ultimately, a failure to deliver the project successfully, undermining the overall objectives of both the project and the quality assurance efforts. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that integrates risk management, stakeholder communication, and adaptive planning. When faced with conflicting demands, the process should involve 1. Identifying the core issue and its potential impact. 2. Conducting a thorough risk assessment to understand the implications of different choices. 3. Evaluating potential solutions, considering their feasibility and impact on quality, schedule, and budget. 4. Engaging stakeholders to present findings, discuss options, and gain consensus on the chosen path. 5. Documenting the decision and the rationale behind it. This systematic approach ensures that decisions are not only technically sound, but also strategically aligned with project and organizational goals, fostering trust and accountability. Question 14. The review process indicates that the project is facing significant budget pressure, leading to a proposal to reduce the allocated funds for risk mitigation and contingency planning. As the test manager, you have identified several high-priority risks that could severely impact the project's schedule and quality if they materialize. Which of the following approaches best balances the need for cost control with the imperative of effective risk management? Option A. Advocate for the retention of sufficient budget for robust mitigation strategies for high-priority risks and the development of detailed contingency plans, explaining the long-term cost implications of neglecting these critical areas. Option B. Reallocate the remaining budget to address only the lowest priority risks that are easiest and cheapest to mitigate, as these are less likely to cause major disruptions. Option C. Agree to the proposed budget reduction by deferring all mitigation and contingency planning activities until later in the project lifecycle, assuming that high-priority risks are unlikely to occur. Option D. Implement superficial mitigation actions and create generic contingency plans for all identified risks to demonstrate that risk management is being addressed without significant budget expenditure. The correct answer is A. Advocate for the retention of sufficient budget for robust mitigation strategies for high-priority risks and the development of detailed contingency plans, explaining the long-term cost implications of neglecting these critical areas. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a test manager to balance the immediate need for cost containment with the long-term implications of inadequate risk mitigation and contingency planning. The pressure to reduce expenditure can lead to overlooking critical risks or underfunding mitigation efforts, which can have severe consequences if those risks materialize. Careful judgment is required to ensure that cost-saving measures do not compromise the overall quality and reliability of the software, thereby protecting the organization from potential financial, reputational, and legal damage. The correct approach involves prioritizing mitigation and contingency planning based on a thorough risk assessment, even when faced with budget constraints. This aligns with the principles of responsible project management and adherence to industry best practices, which are implicitly expected within the ISTQB framework. Specifically, developing robust mitigation strategies to reduce the likelihood or impact of identified risks, and creating detailed contingency plans for high-priority risks ensures that the project is resilient to unforeseen events. This proactive stance is ethically sound, as it demonstrates due diligence and a commitment to delivering a quality product, thereby safeguarding stakeholder interests. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on immediate cost reduction by deferring or eliminating risk mitigation and contingency planning is professionally unacceptable. This failure to address identified risks can lead to significant unforeseen costs and delays if those risks materialize, potentially exceeding the initial savings. Ethically, it represents a dereliction of duty to manage project risks effectively and can expose the organization to undue harm. Another incorrect approach that involves implementing superficial or poorly defined mitigation and contingency plans to give the appearance of risk management without genuine substance is also professionally flawed. While it might satisfy a superficial review, it fails to provide actual protection against risks. This can be seen as misleading stakeholders and demonstrating a lack of commitment to quality and risk management principles. A further incorrect approach that prioritizes low-priority risks for mitigation and contingency planning while neglecting high-priority ones, perhaps due to ease of implementation or perceived lower cost, is also professionally unsound. This misallocation of resources leaves the project vulnerable to the most significant threats, undermining the core purpose of risk management. A professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured risk management approach. This includes identifying risks, analyzing their probability and impact, evaluating their priority, developing appropriate mitigation and contingency strategies, and continuously monitoring and reviewing these plans. When faced with budget constraints, the test manager must advocate for the necessary resources for critical risk management activity, clearly articulating the potential consequences of underfunding. If budget cuts are unavoidable, the decision-making should focus on identifying the least impactful risks to defer or accept, rather than compromising the management of high-priority risks. Question 15. What factors determine the optimal scope and coverage for test automation within a project, considering the principles of efficient test management and return on investment? Option A. Prioritizing the automation of the simplest test cases to achieve quick wins. Option B. Automating all available test cases to maximize the use of the automation tool. Option C. The stability and reusability of test cases, their business criticality, and the potential for regression detection. Option D. The breadth of features supported by the chosen automation tool, irrespective of project needs. The correct answer is C. The stability and reusability of test cases, their business criticality, and the potential for regression detection. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in test automation planning, balancing the desire for comprehensive coverage with the practical constraints of resources and project timelines. The professional challenge lies in making informed decisions about the scope of automation that will yield the most significant return on investment, while adhering to quality standards and project objectives. Careful judgment is required to avoid over-automating low-value areas or under-automating critical functionalities, both of which can lead to wasted effort or compromised product quality. The correct approach involves a systematic evaluation of test cases based on criteria such as stability, reusability, business criticality, and the potential for regression. This aligns with the principles of effective test management, which emphasizes risk-based testing and efficient resource allocation. By prioritizing stable, frequently executed, and business-critical test cases for automation, a test manager ensures that the automation effort delivers maximum value in terms of defect detection and accelerated feedback loops. This approach is ethically sound as it promotes responsible use of project resources and aims to deliver a higher quality product to the end user. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on automating all test cases, regardless of their suitability or value, is professionally unacceptable. This can lead to significant wasted effort in automating volatile or infrequently executed tests, which are poor candidates for automation and can become maintenance burdens. Such an approach fails to demonstrate sound professional judgment and can result in a misallocation of resources, potentially impacting the overall project success and the organization's ability to deliver quality software within budget. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes automating only the easiest test cases, irrespective of their business impact or potential for regression, is also professionally unsound. While seemingly efficient in the short term, this strategy neglects critical areas of the application, leaving them vulnerable to undetected defects. This failure to adequately address business risks through automation is a dereliction of professional duty, as it compromises the integrity of the testing process and the quality of the delivered product. A third incorrect approach that relies solely on the availability of automation tools without considering the underlying test strategy or the specific needs of the project is equally problematic. Automation tools are enablers, not strategic drivers. Basing automation scope on tool capabilities alone, rather than on a thorough analysis of what needs to be automated to achieve project quality goals, leads to a misaligned and ineffective automation strategy. This can result in a tool-heavy but strategically weak automation suite, failing to deliver the intended benefits and potentially creating technical debt. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured assessment of test cases against defined automation criteria. This includes understanding the project's business objectives, identifying critical functionalities, evaluating the stability and frequency of execution of test cases, and considering the maintainability of automated scripts. A risk-based approach, coupled with a clear understanding of the return on investment for automation, should guide the scope definition. Regular review and adaptation of the automation strategy based on project evolution and feedback are also crucial for sustained success. Question 16. The assessment process reveals that the current manual testing approach is time-consuming and impacting release schedules. The team is considering implementing test automation and continuous integration to accelerate the testing cycle. However, the project involves sensitive financial data, necessitating strict adherence to data privacy regulations and auditability requirements. Which approach best balances the need for optimization with the imperative of regulatory compliance and risk mitigation? Option A. Prioritize accelerating the release schedule by reducing the scope of testing, particularly in areas related to data handling and security, to focus on functional aspects that can be easily automated. Option B. Immediately implement comprehensive test automation across all test levels, assuming that increased automation inherently reduces risk and improves compliance. Option C. Introduce continuous integration without a clear strategy for managing the increased test execution frequency and its implications for defect detection and reporting, relying on developers to address any issues that arise. Option D. Conduct a thorough risk assessment to identify potential impacts of automation and continuous integration on data security, auditability, and test coverage, and then implement optimizations based on the identified risks and mitigation strategies. Correct answer is D. Conduct a thorough risk assessment to identify potential impacts of automation and continuous integration on data security, auditability, and test coverage, and then implement optimizations based on the identified risks and mitigation strategies. Explanation. The assessment process reveals a common challenge in test management, balancing the drive for efficiency and speed with the imperative to maintain quality and regulatory compliance. In the context of the ISTQB Certified Tester Advanced Level Test Manager syllabus, particularly concerning test process optimization, this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a nuanced understanding of how different optimization strategies impact risk, compliance, and overall project success. The test manager must not only identify potential optimizations, but also rigorously assess their implications against established quality standards and regulatory requirements, which are paramount in many industries. The correct approach involves a systematic risk assessment to guide the implementation of test process optimizations. This aligns with the principles of risk-based testing, a core concept in test management, which emphasizes focusing testing efforts where the risks are highest. By identifying and analyzing risks associated with potential optimization like automation or continuous integration, the test manager can make informed decisions about which strategies are most appropriate and how to implement them without compromising quality or compliance. This proactive risk management is ethically sound as it prioritizes the delivery of reliable and compliant software, protecting stakeholders and end users. Regulatory frameworks, while not explicitly detailed in the ISTQB syllabus for specific jurisdictions, generally mandate a level of due diligence and risk mitigation in software development and testing, which this approach directly supports. An incorrect approach would be to blindly adopt automation without a thorough risk assessment. This fails to consider the potential for automation to introduce new risks, such as inadequate test coverage if automation scripts are not comprehensive, or the risk of false positives/negatives if automation is not properly maintained. Ethically, this could lead to the release of defective software, potentially causing harm or financial loss. Another incorrect approach is to prioritize speed of delivery over thoroughness, even when risks are identified. This disregards the fundamental responsibility of the test manager to ensure software quality and can lead to regulatory noncompliance if the software fails to meet mandated standards. Finally, implementing optimizations without considering their impact on the overall test process and team capabilities can lead to inefficiencies and increased risk, rather than optimization. This demonstrates a lack of strategic thinking and a failure to uphold professional standards in test management. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the project's objectives and constraints, including any relevant regulatory requirements. This is followed by a comprehensive risk assessment that considers both the risks of not optimizing and the risks introduced by potential optimizations. The chosen optimization strategies should then be evaluated based on their potential to mitigate identified risks, improve efficiency, and maintain or enhance quality, all within the bounds of regulatory compliance. Continuous monitoring and adaptation of the test process are also crucial. Question 17. The performance metrics show a consistent increase in the number of escaped defects in the last 2 releases, alongside a plateau in test execution throughput. The test manager is considering several options to address this trend. Which approach is most aligned with professional test process improvement principles? Option A. Implement a new, advanced test automation tool across all test phases immediately to increase execution speed and coverage. Option B. Focus on increasing the daily test case execution count by setting aggressive targets for individual testers, assuming this will naturally lead to better defect detection. Option C. Conduct a root cause analysis involving the test team to identify process bottlenecks, skill gaps, or environmental issues contributing to escape defects and low throughput, and then propose targeted improvements. Option D. Initiate a performance review for the test team, citing the increased escape defects as evidence of underperformance. The correct answer is A. Implement a new, advanced test automation tool across all test phases immediately to increase execution speed and coverage. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in test process improvement, balancing the need for data-driven decisions with the practical realities of implementation and stakeholder buy-in. The professional challenge lies in identifying the root cause of the observed metric trends and selecting an improvement strategy that is both effective and sustainable, while adhering to the principles of good test management and ethical conduct. Careful judgment is required to avoid superficial fixes or approaches that might negatively impact team morale or project timelines without a clear benefit. The correct approach involves a systematic investigation into the underlying causes of the performance metric trends. This includes engaging with the test team to understand their challenges, reviewing existing processes and tools, and identifying specific areas for improvement. The chosen improvement initiative should be pilot tested, its effectiveness measured against the original metrics, and then rolled out with appropriate training and support. This aligns with the ISTQB Advanced Level Test Manager syllabus, which emphasizes a structured and evidence-based approach to process improvement. Ethically, this approach demonstrates a commitment to continuous improvement and responsible management, ensuring that changes are well considered and beneficial to the project and the team. An incorrect approach would be to immediately implement a new, complex tool without understanding the root cause of the metric issues. This fails to address the actual problems, potentially leading to wasted resources, increased complexity, and frustration among the team. It also bypasses the crucial step of understanding the current state and the team's needs, which is a fundamental aspect of effective test management. Another incorrect approach is to focus solely on increasing the quantity of tests executed without considering their quality or effectiveness. This can lead to a false sense of productivity while masking underlying issues and potentially increasing the defect leakage rate. It neglects the principle of efficient and effective testing, which is a core tenet of professional test management. A third incorrect approach is to blame the test team for the observed metrics without conducting a thorough investigation. This is unprofessional and unethical, as it fails to acknowledge that metrics are often a reflection of the process, tools, and environment, not solely individual performance. Such an approach can damage team morale and hinder any genuine efforts at improvement. The professional decision-making process for similar situations involves a structured problem-solving methodology. First, clearly define the problem using the available data. Second, investigate the root causes through observation, interviews, and process analysis. Third, brainstorm and evaluate potential solutions, considering their feasibility, impact, and alignment with project goals and ethical principles. Fourth, select and implement the most appropriate solution, followed by monitoring and evaluation to ensure its effectiveness and to identify further opportunities for improvement. Question 18. Quality control measures reveal a consistent increase in escape defects in recent releases, impacting customer satisfaction. As the test manager, you are tasked with improving the test process to prevent recurrence. Which of the following approaches best addresses this situation? Option A. Conduct a comprehensive assessment of the current test process using a recognized maturity model, e.g., TMMI, CMMI, to identify specific strengths and weaknesses, and then develop a prioritized plan for targeted improvements based on the assessment findings. Option B. Instruct the test team to adopt a generic list of industry best practices for testing, such as increased test coverage and more frequent regression testing, without a formal assessment of the current process. Option C. Immediately implement a mandatory, more rigorous set of manual checks for all critical functionalities in the next release to catch more defects before they escape. Option D. Focus all available resources on increasing the number of test cases executed per day, aiming to find as many defects as possible in the remaining time before the next release. The correct answer is A. Conduct a comprehensive assessment of the current test process using a recognized maturity model, e.g., TMMI, CMMI, to identify specific strengths and weaknesses, and then develop a prioritized plan for targeted improvements based on the assessment findings. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge for test managers, identifying and addressing systemic issues within the testing process. The challenge lies in moving beyond superficial fixes to implement sustainable improvements that align with organizational goals and regulatory expectations. A test manager must balance the immediate need for defect reduction with the long-term strategic objective of process maturity. This requires a deep understanding of assessment models and the ability to translate assessment findings into actionable plans that gain stakeholder buy-in. The pressure to deliver quickly can often conflict with the time and resources needed for thorough process improvement. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic assessment using a recognized model like TMMI or CMMI to identify specific weaknesses and strengths in the current test process. This is followed by the development of a prioritized improvement plan that addresses the root causes of identified issues, focusing on measurable outcomes and alignment with organizational objectives. This approach is professionally sound because it is data-driven, systematic, and aims for sustainable improvement rather than reactive fixes. Regulatory frameworks, while not explicitly detailed here, generally encourage robust quality management systems that include continuous process improvement. By using established assessment models, the test manager demonstrates due diligence and a commitment to best practices, which indirectly supports compliance with quality standards and potentially regulatory requirements for product quality and reliability. Focus on prioritization ensures efficient resource allocation, a key ethical consideration for responsible management. Incorrect approach is analysis. Focusing solely on immediate defect reduction without understanding the underlying process issues is an incorrect approach. This is a reactive measure that fails to address the root causes, leading to recurring problems and inefficient use of resources. It neglects the strategic imperative of process improvement, which is crucial for long-term quality and cost-effectiveness. Such an approach may lead to a perception of superficial progress while the fundamental weaknesses persist, potentially impacting compliance with quality standards over time. Implementing a broad, unprioritized set of generic best practices without a specific assessment is also incorrect. This approach lacks the targeted nature required for effective improvement. It risks wasting resources on activities that may not address the most critical weaknesses or may not be suitable for the organization's context. This can lead to a lack of tangible results and stakeholder dissatisfaction, undermining the credibility of the testing function, and potentially failing to meet implicit or explicit quality assurance expectations. Question 19. Quality control measures reveal that a critical software release is scheduled for deployment in 48 hours, but a significant number of high-priority test cases, essential for meeting the defined exit criteria in the test plan, remain unexecuted due to unforeseen technical challenges. Stakeholders are pushing for an immediate release to meet market demands. As the test manager, which approach best upholds the principles of process optimization and regulatory compliance within the ISTQB framework? Option A. Release the product as scheduled, but only after all critical test cases have been executed and passed, even if it means delaying the release beyond the initial deadline. Option B. Release the product immediately and rely on user feedback to identify and address any critical defects post-release. Option C. Release the product immediately to meet market demands, deferring the execution of remaining critical test cases to a post-release patch. Option D. Proceed with the release as scheduled, ensuring all critical test cases are executed and passed before deployment. The correct answer is D. Proceed with the release as scheduled, ensuring all critical test cases are executed and passed before deployment. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires the test manager to balance the immediate need for a functional product with the long-term implications of inadequate testing. The pressure to release a product quickly can lead to shortcuts that compromise quality and potentially violate regulatory compliance, especially in a highly regulated industry. The test manager must exercise sound judgment to advocate for appropriate testing practices while managing stakeholder expectations and project timelines. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves prioritizing the completion of the test plan's exit criteria before proceeding to release. This aligns with the ISTQB Certified Tester Advanced Level Test Manager framework's emphasis on structured testing and defined quality gates. Specifically, the exit criteria, as detailed in the test plan, serve as the agreed-upon conditions that must be met to signify the readiness for release. Adhering to these criteria ensures that the product has undergone sufficient validation and verification, thereby minimizing the risk of defects reaching end users and potentially causing reputational damage or regulatory noncompliance. This approach demonstrates professional responsibility and a commitment to delivering a quality product that meets defined standards. Incorrect approach is analysis. An approach that suggests releasing the product immediately without meeting the exit criteria fails to uphold the principles of controlled testing and risk management. This bypasses the established quality gates and introduces an unacceptable level of risk, potentially leading to significant post-release issues and customer dissatisfaction. Ethically, it can be seen as misleading stakeholders about the product's readiness. An approach that proposes deferring the remaining critical test cases to a post-release patch, while seemingly a compromise, still violates the spirit of the exit criteria. It acknowledges that the product is not fully tested according to the plan, thereby exposing users to potential defects. This can lead to a reactive rather than proactive quality strategy, which is often more costly and damaging in the long run. An approach that suggests solely relying on user feedback to identify critical defects after release is a significant abdication of the test manager's responsibility. While user feedback is valuable, it should not be the primary mechanism for discovering critical issues. This approach indicates a failure in the pre-release testing strategy and can lead to severe consequences, including potential regulatory breaches if the defects impact safety, security, or compliance. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a decision-making process that begins with a thorough understanding of the test plan, particularly the defined scope, objectives, and exit criteria. When faced with pressure to deviate, the test manager must clearly articulate the risks associated with not meeting these criteria, referencing the test plan as the agreed-upon baseline. Communication with stakeholders is paramount, explaining the rationale behind adhering to the exit criteria and the potential negative impacts of premature release. If compromises are necessary, they should be formally documented, agreed upon by all relevant parties, and include revised risk assessments and mitigation plans, rather than simply ignoring established quality gates. Question 20. Operational review demonstrates that, while the testing effort is underway, stakeholders have expressed confusion regarding who is accountable for specific testing activities and the overall progress of the test effort. They are also unclear about the established channels for receiving updates and raising concerns. As the test manager, what is the most effective approach to address this situation and ensure clear understanding and confidence from the stakeholder perspective? Option A. Implement a clearly documented test team structure with defined roles and responsibilities for each team member, e.g., test manager, test lead, testers, coupled with established reporting lines and communication channels for regular updates and issue escalation. Option B. Encourage team members to communicate directly with stakeholders based on their individual task assignments, bypassing formal reporting lines to expedite information flow. Option C. Focus solely on the technical execution of test cases and defer any discussions about team structure or reporting to a later stage of the project, once the core testing is complete. Option D. Assign specific testing tasks to individual team members without formally defining their overarching responsibilities or reporting relationships, relying on informal communication to convey progress. The correct answer is A. Implement a clearly documented test team structure with defined roles and responsibilities for each team member, e.g., test manager, test lead, testers, coupled with established reporting lines and communication channels for regular updates and issue escalation. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in test management, ensuring effective team structure and role clarity, particularly from a stakeholder perspective. The professional challenge lies in balancing the need for specialized expertise with efficient communication and reporting lines, all while meeting project objectives and stakeholder expectations. Misalignment in roles and responsibilities can lead to duplicated effort, missed tasks, communication breakdowns, and ultimately, a compromised testing outcome, impacting stakeholder confidence and project success. Careful judgment is required to define a structure that is both operationally sound and transparent to stakeholders. The correct approach involves establishing a clear, documented test team structure with explicitly defined roles and responsibilities, along with robust reporting lines and communication channels. This directly addresses the stakeholders' need for visibility and understanding of how testing is being managed and executed. By defining roles such as test manager, test lead, and individual testers, and outlining their specific accountabilities, the test manager ensures that all aspects of the test process are covered. Establishing clear reporting structures, e.g., testers report to leads, leads report to the manager, and communication channels, e.g., regular status meetings, defect tracking systems, ensures timely information flow, issue escalation, and stakeholder updates. This structured approach aligns with professional testing standards and ethical considerations by promoting accountability, transparency, and efficient resource utilization, thereby fostering trust with stakeholders. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on assigning tasks without defining overarching responsibilities for each role creates ambiguity. Stakeholders may not understand who is accountable for specific testing phases or overall quality, leading to confusion and potential gaps. This lack of clarity can be seen as a failure in professional duty to manage the testing process effectively and transparently. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes individual preferences over a structured hierarchy, leading to informal reporting lines, undermines accountability. Stakeholders may not know who to approach for specific information or decisions, hindering effective communication and potentially delaying issue resolution. This can be viewed as a breach of professional conduct by failing to establish a predictable and reliable management structure. A third incorrect approach that limits communication to only the test manager, excluding other team members from direct stakeholder interaction or information sharing, creates a bottleneck. This can lead to stakeholders receiving incomplete or delayed information, and it prevents the broader test team from understanding stakeholder needs and feedback directly, impacting their ability to adapt their testing efforts. This is professionally unsound as it hinders collaboration and transparency. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a systematic approach. 1. Understand stakeholder needs. Identify what information and level of detail stakeholders require regarding the test team and its activities. 2. Define core roles. Based on project scope and complexity, define essential roles within the test team, e.g., test manager, test lead, testers, specialist testers. 3. Document responsibilities. Clearly articulate the specific duties, accountabilities, and decision-making authority for each role. 4. Establish reporting and communication. Design clear reporting lines and define communication protocols, including frequency, methods, and escalation paths. 5. Communicate and validate. Present the proposed structure and roles to stakeholders for feedback and validation, ensuring buy-in and understanding. 6. Monitor and adapt. Continuously review the effectiveness of the structure and adapt as needed based on project evolution and feedback.